All right, last week the White House announced a controversial nuclear agreement between Iran and the U.S. and 5 other world powers. The Obama administration further angered critics, including some powerful Democrats, by taking the deal directly to the United Nations before giving Congress a chance to vote on it. Here's the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Ben Cardin.
I don't know why they're going to the United Nations. I think they should have gone to the United Nations after the 60-day review. They don't gain anything by doing it earlier. I think it is not consistent with the Iranian Review Act.
Those concerns were ignored, and today the UN Security Council unanimously endorsed the deal, and K.T. McFarland explains why the United States should have gotten the first say.
Nobody in Tehran is chanting death to China, death to Russia. They're chanting death to America, destroy Israel. So the United States looks at this and says, well, where's everybody's self-interest? You know, the Russians want to sell them weapons. The Chinese want to buy Iranian oil. Everybody wants to do business with Iran, and they're not, and the countries which are involved in the UN, they're not as concerned with death to China, death to Russia.
So, Eric, a week later, as people have sort of looked at the details of this deal, it might not be as bad as some of its worst critics think, but it's certainly not as good as the Obama administration is saying.
There was a fantastic interview over the weekend. Chris Wallace took on both Secretary of State Kerry and Ernie Moniz, the Energy Secretary. It was fascinating to see the spin that they put on this deal.
Can I show it?
Oh,
and then
get your
we have it. I want to say, let me show you what Eric is talking about, and then we'll get him to continue. This is John Kerry yesterday.
I never, in 4 years, had a discussion about anywhere, anytime. The fact is that in arms control, there is no country anywhere on this planet that has anywhere, anytime. There is no such standard within arms control inspections. And the intelligence community has made it clear to us, as they did before we signed on to this deal, that we would be able to know what they are doing during that intervening period of time.
But of course, they were on record saying that.
And President Obama said it. He said we were going to go after anywhere, anytime inspections. Not only that, there was another interchange with Moniz where Chris Wallace said, hey, what about years 15 and forward? That President Obama is on record saying the Iranians can enrich uranium to bomb level and as much as they want. And Moniz says, no, they won't do that. It's not in the deal. And then Wallace pushes back and says, where is that? Because I don't see it anywhere in the deal. And Moniz says, well, they've promised to do that. Now, if you listen carefully, basically what they have a deal for 10 years, possibly up to 15 years. After that, Katie bar the door. The Iranians can do whatever the heck they want. They will have bombs and massive amounts of bombs. And the administration, those two guys right there, are banking on the Iranians holding their, quote, promise. Not even in writing, just they promise they won't enrich uranium. That's dangerous to the world.
And if you remember, Kimberly, last, just 4 months ago in March and April, the Congress had this big debate, and finally, Senator Corker and Cardin, who we just showed, the Corker is a Republican, work out a bipartisan deal. They actually pass a thing that give the president a little bit more time. And then the president, after asking them to do that, bypasses them and goes directly to the UN Security Council.
I mean, again, but add this to the Obama highlight reel or low light reel, something like that. He has no care whatsoever about what the Republicans think, what Congress thinks. This was something that he was bound and determined to put through, that Kerry out his marching orders, get this done, let's get this to happen, no matter what the consequences and no matter what other members of Congress think about it. So this is just another slight by him going around them and not giving them proper, due deference.
Well, Geraldo, why not just let the Congress have a look at it?
Because this is not the U.S. versus Iran. As everyone knows, Dana, but we forget, we are so arrogant. We think that we are the world. We are not the world.
We are the world.
We are not the world.
We are the people.
Do we really believe that the governments of Russia and China and Germany and Britain and France don't want a nuclear-free Iran? Do we think that the Security Council, 15 countries to 0, that they are so naive that the Iranians pulled one over, not just on Barack Obama, but on all of these world leaders, all of the...
Yes, they did.
Remember, the League of Nations could have averted World War II. The League of Nations was passed by the rest of the world. Woodrow Wilson brought it to the Congress of the United States. They defeated it. We never joined the League of Nations, which collapsed. The international order collapsed. The Nazis rose up. We had World War II, the second global conflict in 2 decades. And I think that for 1 second, Why don't we just consider that these people are people of good faith?
Because
and that
they're not, and they've never been.
So which one are the bad ones? The British?
No, I'm talking about the Iranians, Geraldo, the ones who.
But what about the people? What about the people that approved this deal?
Literally thousands.
But what about the British, the French, the Germans?
They all have something
Do you think
to gain.
Germans?
Every one of the other five, P5 plus one. The one that doesn't get anything out of this deal is us. The other five do, and the Iranians.
I'm telling you. Well,
and they hate us the most.
It
It is death to America.
Before we have to
JT's
go,
right.
because you've been sitting here so patiently.
3 points. We never chant death to anyone. Isn't it time that we do? We're too busy doing Pilates and hot yoga. We should do our exercise, death to Iran, get everybody out on the street, because I'm sick and tired of seeing other countries do it. We don't do it. Oh, no, we do chant death to our cops. That's what we do. We look inward, not outward. Number 2, Obama on his weekly address said, I make no apology for keeping this country safe and secure through hard work of diplomacy over the easy rush of war.
Passive aggressive.
Another straw man. This guy has so many straw men. The White House is a fire hazard. Now let's also look not just at Iran, but this week, Cuba. No conditions about cop killers being returned for Cuba or hostages in Iran. That tells you one thing, that we are afraid to ask for anything because we feel we don't deserve it. What about the prisoners in Cuba and the cop killers in Cuba? What about our hostages
this is about
in Iran?
domestic relations. This is about domestic diplomacy.
Right.
What about Vietnam? What about China? We have relations with all of them. What about the African dictators? We have relations with all of them.
I did not have relations with that African dictator.
It is immature.
That sounded weird.
To have only diplomatic relations with people that you like.
Well, let's get something out of it, as Eric says. Let's get the cop killer.
Yeah, Geraldo. Why wouldn't you want him to get American hostages back? Don't you think he should have? He had the leverage.
What about what Germany did to the rest of the world in World War II?
What does that have to do with
We don't have time for that.
What about what the Japanese did? What about what the Vietnamese did? What about what the North Koreans?
So that makes
you have relationships,
okay,
and then you try to negotiate. This is an imperfect world. Better to talk than not to talk.
And better to be quiet when you have a break, because coming up, we're learning more about the shooter who opened fire on